Hey, it's Mike Brennan. We're doing another episode, another segment on MITech TV. And this one came to me I think it was last week. I got a press release. For those who are not aware, the mothballed Palisades Nuclear Power Plant in southwest Michigan, with its efforts now to restart it. And we have with us Arnie Gundersen and Kevin Kamps, and they both play different roles in the process to not let it restart. But instead of me trying to explain it, I'll let them explain it. Let's start off with Arnie. Why don't you start and explain who you are, what you do, and then we'll go to Kevin, and then we'll discuss your points. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm an old guy. I'm 76, and Palisades engineering began when I was in high school. So we're talking about a really old reactor. It finally went online shortly after I graduated college in 1971. So my role in this is, I've been in the nuclear industry for 50 plus years now, and I've never been more concerned about the safety of a plant than I am about restarting Palisades. It was it was closed in 2022 for economic reasons. It didn't make sense. And when the owner walked away and this Holtec, the present owner, bought it, the goal was to dismantle it. And over the last 3 years, it morphed into in Holtec's own words, a resurrection. And I think they're cutting corners on the resurrection. And as a result, I am opposed to restarting it.
Kevin, let's introduce yourself, what you do, and then you take on this.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Kamps. I serve as radioactive waste specialist at Beyond Nuclear. We're a national watchdog group on the nuclear industry. I'm born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan, speaking to you from Portage, Michigan at the moment. And I have watchdog Palisades since 1992. We closed it in 2022, actually multiple times. The previous owner, Entergy, closed it on May 20th. For economic reasons, yes, they could no longer gouge the ratepayers, but there are many safety issues at Palisades that Entergy did not want to fix because that costs money. Now, Holtec doesn't want to fix them either. We're in fear of a meltdown at Palisades, and we shouldn't be here. This has been a nightmare 3.5 years in on this restart. It's unprecedented. It's unneeded. It's insanely expensive for the public, and it's extremely high risk for safety, security, health, and the environment. And that's the motivation of our environmental coalition to try to stop this restart. And we are also opposed to the small modular reactor, so-called new builds that are targeted at the Palisades site as well.
So tell us a little bit about why you view this restart as risky. I know in particular, I noticed something about the degraded tubes at the plant.
Well, I'll give an overview, but Arnie can give you the technical devilish details. The steam generator tube degradation was bad before Holtec showed up in 2022. The previous owner, Consumers Energy, told the Michigan Public Service Commission in 2006, nearly 20 years ago, that the steam generators needed to be entirely replaced. They never were because the Nuclear Regulatory Commission did not require it. In comes Holtec, neglects to do basic safety maintenance for 2 long years. And now that particular pathway to meltdown is severely worse than it was before. And there are a half dozen other major safety systems that are at the breaking point. The worst embrittled reactor pressure vessel in the country, perhaps the world. A reactor vessel closure head that should have been replaced again in 2006. Don't take it from me, take it from the previous owner speaking to the state. The worst operating experience with control rod drive mechanism seal leakage in the country. And as we speak, they're seeking yet longer delays on implementing fire protection upgrades that have been needed, long story short, for 50 years since a close call in Alabama due to a fire. They're delaying those for years or decades further into the future. And the last thing I'll mention, I could keep going, is sumps and strainers. The containment coating is calcium silicate. If the emergency core cooling system is activated, it's going to turn that material into the viscosity of Elmer's glue. It's going to dissolve and it will block the flow path for emergency coolant needed to prevent a meltdown in the core. This is a partial list of the severe safety problems at Palisades.
Arnie?
Yeah, I'll just touch on the first one, which was the condition of the tubes. Um, the In 1991, the steam generators were replaced, and um, no steam generator has lasted with this type of tube for 30 years, let alone 35 years at Palisades. So we're running on borrowed time with these tubes in the best of cases. But what happened when the new owner took over is they never maintained the water chemistry. It's sort of like letting your Ford sit out in the yard for 7 years without replacing the cooling water, the radiator water. So they let it sit there, and it attacked the tubes. Just that's what water does. So after 2 years of letting that corrosive water sit inside the steam generators, they finally looked and they found thousands of holes, cracks, cracks that could become holes. And my position is, even if you plug the ones that are significant, the smaller ones will continue to grow. There's this thing called hideout where the chemicals hide in the crevices. And when that reactor starts up under high pressure and under high temperature, those steam generator tubes are going to fail quite rapidly. I don't think it's going to last 9 months.
And then if there is a meltdown, let's do that scenario. I mean, right on Lake Michigan, lots of issues. Why don't you describe that?
Well, the plant is on Lake Michigan. The pipes that would blow would result in airborne radiation releases. And yeah, it could be as minor as a release that blows away in 2 or 3 days and winds up over in Wisconsin or Minnesota or something like that. Or it could be so severe that local and regional evacuations would be necessary. We just don't know. And the argument we're trying to make is this is the first plant that's this old that they're trying to start back up, and all of the others have this same dangerous water chemistry. Nobody maintained pristine water for a plant that they were going to destroy. So the our goal is I think everybody would admit that Palisades is the precedent-setting example, and let's get it right. Let's go and replace those steam generators, which are known to be degraded and have been, as Kevin said, for a decade or more. And if you're gonna do a resurrection, that's Holtec's own word. If you're gonna do a resurrection, do it right. And it seems like the focus is on getting the plant started quickly. Reminds me of the NASA engineers with the Challenger disaster, where NASA's goal was to meet the launch window. And we all know how that turned out. I sort of feel like I'm a voice in the wilderness saying the same thing right now.
Well, yeah, it's the pilots call that get there-itis, and get there-itis is frequently a fatal disease. Tell us also a little bit, if you could, I think Kevin maybe on this one, how much money has already been spent on this resurrection, and how much more is projected to be spent?
Sure. Just real quick on the meltdown consequences. The NRC commissioned Sandia National Labs to look at that question. What would a meltdown at Palisades look like? This was way back in 1982. It's called Calculation of Reactor Accident Consequences. They actually looked at all existing reactors in the country, plus some that never got built. At Palisades, the numbers were shocking, as they were at many plants. And in fact, NRC tried to suppress its own study. But Congressman Markey, now Senator Markey from Massachusetts, outed the report in a congressional hearing. The figures at Palisades back in 1982 were acute radiation poisoning deaths numbering 1,000, latent cancer fatalities numbering 10,000, another 7,000 radiation injuries. And here's a money consequence, property damage at the time, $52 billion.
Hmm.
So adjust for inflation alone, you're talking $168 billion with a B in today's dollar figures. And the casualties would be worse today too, because the population has grown since 1982. There's more people in harm's way, especially during, for example, the South Haven Blueberry Festival. I mean, what are the chances that the disaster happens during the Blueberry Festival? Well, they're greater than zero if the plant is operating. So that implicates evacuating 50,000 people who are visiting the area too, in addition to the local residents. But in terms of the money flow, this is really what Holtec's all about, is making money off the public. And so in this particular case, they've requested more than $8 billion with a B to restart Palisades. Thus far, they've gotten $3.12 billion, mostly federal taxpayer money, but also state taxpayer money. And then there's the ratepayer gouge that's to come once they start supplying electricity. So that's just the restart. And then on the small modular reactors, they want to build 2 of them at Palisades, another $7.4 billion. You're over $15 billion in public money at the Palisades site alone. It's a national scandal of waste, fraud, and abuse because, like I said, for the past 3.5 years of this restart nightmare, all they've done is try to reverse the paperwork on the shutdown. Of course, they've done no maintenance, they've done no replacements, no repairs, other than these band aid fixes on the steam generators. They just want to fire this thing up and pocket all the money. And they're putting the entire Great Lakes region at risk doing this.
How much money do you think would be needed to make the plant ready to restart? You just mentioned $7 billion figure, but how much more to address all these safety concerns?
Well, the single largest line item on the restart checklist, and this is Holtec's own document we got through a Freedom of Information Act request to the state of Michigan. They admitted, and Arnie caught this during his read through, they admitted that the steam generators are worn out. This document stated July 5th of 2022. They'd had Palisades for a week at that point. The single largest line item was $510 million to replace the worn out steam generators. And in the past few years since then, they've totally backpedaled on replacing it. Now it's a repair job with the sleeving and the plugging and the unplugging. So they would rather just keep that $510 million and go forward with band aid fixes.
You know, can I add a little bit here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You know, the Entergy, the Holtec has never designed, never constructed, and never operated a nuclear plant. They're a demolition constructor. They have no real world experience in running a nuclear plant. Entergy did, the company that owned it in 2022. And as Kevin suggested earlier, Entergy deferred so much maintenance, and then when its subsidy, electric subsidy, ran out, it just walked away and closed it down, which is fine. It was we wound up with this carcass of a plant that should have been closed. You could get Palisades running probably for 10 billion. But the point is, where would that money be best spent? You know, it's this thing called the opportunity cost. Could you better spend it on renewables and batteries? And we already know that when Palisades starts up, they're going to be subsidizing it again as it was subsidized back in 2022. It makes no sense economically to run Palisades.
Matt?
All right. Well, if people want more information, we're coming to the end of the segment here. If people want more information on, how to find out about this and how to reach both of you, how would they go about doing that?
To find more information, we've posted everything going back 3.5 years on this fight against the restart. It's at the Beyond Nuclear website, www.beyondnuclear.org. And just search for the word nightmare in the search engine, and you'll have all of our Palisades posts.